Welcome to the Behind the Girl Boss podcast, where every woman's journey takes center stage. Join us in this safe space as we explore the ins and outs of business, career, mental health, the music industry, and more. Whether you're a go-getter or a dream chaser, we've got stories for you. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok for an exclusive backstage pass. Get ready to be inspired, empowered, and entertained. Welcome to the ride. Hey everyone, what's up and welcome back to the podcast. So we have another guest with us and today we have Lauren. So hi Lauren.
Hi, Amanda. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited to have you on. Do you want to start off by telling us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do?
Of course, my name is Lauren House. I sell residential real estate between Scottsdale, Arizona, and Miami. I always feel like Miami doesn't warrant a state, it's just Miami.
Yeah.
And so, with that being said, I have been in the industry since 2008, not by choice. That's just when I graduated. I also have a podcast. I'm a co host to The Hot Girl School, which is a podcast to encourage women to work on themselves, which in turn makes you more confident. While being confident is a little bit about what you look like, it's really about your vibe. So we're always driving home. We have tons of tangible takeaways. We want to make sure that women have a place to go to feel better about themselves and understand what it means to become confident.
Yeah, I love that. I'm excited to dive into all that with you. Before we do that, I like to do a little hot tea segment to kind of just break the ice and know little fun facts. So the first one is if you could have dinner with anyone, dead or alive, who would it be?
Can I choose a dead person and an alive person?
Yes, yes.
It would be Taylor Swift and Marilyn Monroe.
Okay, yeah, that would be like such a cool conversation, especially if it was at the exact same time. I feel like that would be
It
so
would
cool.
be. It would be. I don't know why. I mean, I always feel like when I have to answer that question, that it should be like somebody profound. But first, like that's just who I'm drawn to. I'm like, that's who I'd have dinner
Yeah.
with.
Yeah, I love that. The next one is what's one TV show, book, or podcast you recommend to everyone you meet?
I have a book and a podcast for you. So the
Okay.
book is called Getting the Love You Want by Harville Hendrix. So it's something I've read once a year since 2020. And I have both the hard copy and the Audible version. The bonus of the hard copy is that they actually have exercises in the back that
Oh,
are meant to be done with your partner. But I did it when I was single, and it was very insightful to understand who I am in a relationship and why I show up like that. So that's number one. And number two is Build with Layla Hormozy. I know like everybody loves her right now. She has just taught me so much to just pretty much be okay with and give myself permission to be the person that I truly want to be in business. I feel like I'm always
mhm.
trying to people please my way through and like that's too much. I shouldn't do that. And to hear somebody else's standards of how they work and how they think, it kind of has just shown me that there's other people out there who I'm very similar to. I just haven't found them yet. So those are
Yeah,
two very one's for relationships and one's for business.
yeah. I'll definitely read both of those and listen to that because I haven't heard of either of those.
You haven't gotten into Layla Hormozy?
No,
Ooh. Have you gotten into her husband, Alex Hormozy?
no, I don't know who they are.
Okay. Oh, I'm so excited. I mean, if you're they're very business. Layla is extremely articulate. And it's almost like the thing I love about Taylor Swift, for example, is she can take those emotions that you feel in a relationship and she puts them into words. So when you hear the words, you're like, oh my gosh, that's what I'm feeling. And Layla does the same thing with business for me. She says things a certain way, I'm like, oh my gosh, she literally just hit the nail on the head. So that's what I love about her. And if you have a business mindset, she is at the top of it. So you will have a lot to learn.
Yes, I'm excited. I'll definitely check them out right after this. And then the last one is what's one thing you can't start your morning without?
Earl Grey tea and an early morning. I'm a 4 a.m.er, which means you
Oh,
get in bed at yeah, it means you get in bed at 8 p.m. I'm really like in bed at 7:30. And in a sense, this kind of only works if you're single. If you're in a relationship, it's very hard because, or if you want a social life, and people don't want to necessarily go to dinner at 5 o'clock, so you can be in bed by 7:30. So usually I stick to the 4 a.m. when I'm in that no distractions season. Otherwise, it's too hard. Like I can't go to bed at 10, 11, 12 and still wake up at 4. Like my body
yeah.
needs X amount of sleep. But it's when I have the most peace and quiet. I don't have anybody calling or texting. It's just uninterrupted time.
Yeah.
And I find that like it can be anything. It can be like things I need to order from Amazon. It's not always work. Sometimes I just go exercise or go for a walk or, it's just my alone time. And if I wake up at 7 because I happen to be up late working, then I miss those few hours with myself and it's like my day's just off track. So it's a great habit to implement. I don't necessarily think it makes you more successful. Like you don't see
Mhm.
dollars in your bank account from it, but it's a really good habit and it makes you want to party and drink less if that's your tendency because you love your morning so much.
Yeah, no, oh my God, I'm the opposite. I wake up at like 9, 10, and I'm like, oh, like this is so early for me. Like I used to wake up at like 11, 12, and now like I transitioned it to 9. Maybe I can get earlier, but I can't imagine waking up at 4 a.m. right now.
Yeah, but think about it. Like my 4 a.m. is probably your 11 p.m. There's not
Hmm.
many, you have the same hours of no distraction and enjoying your time with
Yeah,
yourself or whatever you're doing that I do. It's just at different ends of the system.
that's true. Yeah.
So, or ends of the spectrum.
Yeah.
So, we're doing the same thing. It's just opposite hours. There's nothing wrong with that.
Exactly. Exactly. I love that. So, talking about real estate, you've built a strong presence in the real estate world. Can you kind of talk about what made you want to get into real estate and how you got your start?
Yes, absolutely. So, I graduated from college in 2008 and however this sounds coming out of the mouth, this is true. I wanted a job where I had to wear stilettos, a pencil skirt, and a collared shirt. That was like the only thing that I cared about. I wanted to look cute when I went to the office. And so I landed a job as an executive assistant to a commercial real estate agent. Now, if anybody was paying attention, 2008 was not the best time to get into real estate. And so I didn't have like a ton to do. And so when I look back and reflect on those times, I'm going to go on a quick tangent here.
Yeah, that's fine.
It was so rough going into commercial real estate, which is a very heavily male dominated industry as a 22-year-old. I
Yeah.
did not know what life was about. I had really, at that point in my life, like only been valued for what I looked like, which is why I put what I looked like at work on such a heavy
Hmm.
weight in order to find a job. And I got in there and I realized these guys, which no offense if anybody's watching it right now, they are the definition of work hard, play hard, like party till 2 a.m. and get up and run a marathon at 6 a.m. and then win the marathon. Like it was very impressive, but you also have the dark side. Like a lot of them watch porn in the office. They've all kind of
Hmm.
like ran through the women in the office. And I came in as fresh meat and a quite innocent air. I'm a Sagittarius. So like a lot of my lens is with a very innocent outlook.
Yeah.
And so I learned over time that like they had bets going in the office about who was going to sleep with me first. And one of the guys went on my Facebook and got pictures of me in a bikini and they sent it to everybody in the office except for me. Well, he didn't know that I had access to my boss's email, so I saw it. And then I had to go confront that situation. A different time from the Christmas party, I would live like 2 streets over for one of the guys at the office. And so we decided to share a taxi home, save a little money, right? Back in, when taxis were in. And the next day I walk in and they're like, "Oh, you slept with him, didn't you?" And I'm like, "What? I shared a taxi home with the guy, you know?" So it was like almost a school of hard knocks that
Yeah.
I didn't realize, just living my life was going to show up later, if that makes sense, and then kind of be turned against me. So if anything, when I reflect on that job, I'm like, okay, I learned a lot about the business world and I had a very hard entrance into commercial real estate. And so I found a love later for real estate in life. I kind of got away from real estate. I went and taught yoga and I wanted to like get
Hmm.
out of that world because I was just uncomfortable. I didn't really know what to do
Yeah.
with myself in the commercial real estate world. You don't make that much money when you teach yoga. And so I really just wanted to get back to helping people, but still making sure that I was taking care of myself. So I got back into residential real estate with the nudge of an ex-boyfriend being like, "Dude, get back into real estate." So that's kind of like the beginning, probably 10 years of real estate.
Yeah. And when you got back into it, was the environment kind of the same, or did it kind of change over time, or is it still kind of toxic in that type of way?
So I switched back into residential real estate. I didn't switch
Okay.
back. I switched from commercial real estate into residential real estate. And to answer your question, actually, I only attracted single male clients. So I somehow energetically kept that toxicity, right? I would call and do my follow-ups and they'd be like, "So, how's your boyfriend?" Knowing I
Hmm.
don't have a boyfriend just to like see if I had a boyfriend. And so at some point after I think I had 27 single male clients and it just felt like I think for almost a year. And I just felt like I was spinning my wheels and I was so frustrated and it's scary to say, "Okay, I've worked so hard. I've been all these people have been referred to me and now I'm just going to kick them to the curb." Like they're going to
Yeah.
be a real estate deal. I want that to be mine because I've already put the work into it. But on the other hand, over here, I'm thinking, I'm not really willing to be treated like this and tolerated like this. I don't want to keep chasing something that's never going to turn into anything.
Yeah.
So what do? I kicked them all. I asked God, I said, "Can you just bring me like couples and single females? That would be great."
And then
And
did that
so
happen?
it did happen. And I was actually pretty shocked. I also did other things. Like I changed the way that I approached couples. Like I never wanted to be a threat again, because I was taught that what I look like is valuable. I didn't want to
Hmm.
be a threat. So like did my best to befriend the women and try and show them like I wore a fake wedding ring. I mean, I tried everything just
Yeah.
to like prove like I'm not a threat. I'm here for work and I want to make sure I take good care of you guys. So that's the transition back. It was a nice change, but you still have the agents and the clients who they sexually harass women. They just do.
Yeah. Yeah. It's sad because I feel like in any industry where it's like a male dominated one, that occurs a lot. And I feel like people don't talk about it a lot, or you only hear it in conversations like this, like in the bigger picture, like people just don't talk about it because I guess they're like scared. But
Mhm.
like I'm sure if you speak to like five women in a row, like mostly everyone will have felt something like that.
Oh yeah. I mean, there are issues which, again, are not spoken about
Hmm.
often, but being a single woman at an open house, we're going to just keep this real estate related because that's really all I can speak to.
Yeah.
To be a single woman at an open house and a man knows, like, our job is to promote that listing online. You give the day, the time. Your house is vacant. So people know that you're not home. People know that you are at an open house alone. It's just, it really, you
Yeah.
don't think that it puts you in this weird situation or this even nefarious situation until
Hmm.
something happens to you.
Yeah.
And that's when you're like, okay, something's got to change. You either bring a buddy or like I went and got a gun after the first time because I was so scared and I have pulled it out on someone and he left, but I didn't know what else to do. I can't have a
Yeah.
babysitter with me every time I decide to do an open house. That's silly.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I never even thought about that. Like those are things you don't think about until something happens and then you're like, "Oh, like yeah, I never thought of it in that way."
yeah, and on top of it, people don't think it's going to happen to them. And again,
Hmm.
until something big happens to you, like I've had my house broken into. I know that I'm not an exception and that you have no idea what people are if they're watching you.
Yeah.
And so between that and then like the rules you hear, like it's hot in Arizona in the summer. I want to park my car in the garage so I don't have to go out into like 120-degree car at the end of my open
Yeah.
house. And the one time I parked in the garage, that's when the shady thing happened. And it's like, okay, this is why they tell you not to park in the garage. But again, it's like we all just think that it's never going to happen to us. So
Yeah.
my rule is like when somebody gives you advice like that, you take it because
Yeah.
it can happen. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, it shakes you and that's what shapes you. So
Yeah. For real estate, how did you kind of market yourself and get clients and build up that like roster?
I have a leg up because I'm from Scottsdale and then I work and live in Scottsdale. So that's been very helpful. I've helped friends from kindergarten all the way
Hmm.
to college to people I've met from my partying days. And it just kind of snowballed. But the main things I did because I wanted to be in control of my success was I worked open houses Wednesday to Sunday for 2 years straight, literally with the exception of Thanksgiving Day and Christmas Day. And so I didn't go out of town. I worked if I was sick. I didn't care. And let me be very clear, most of those no one came into. Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday are very dead open houses.
Hmm.
But if somebody came in, I would make a wonderful relationship with them. And because you have one on one time versus a Saturday or Sunday when you have a ton of people walking through and you can't talk to everybody, that was where I built my business. So open houses, number one. Number two would be I took every single lead that was not wanted in the office. Every brokerage has an internal system, and the seasoned agents don't want to take lower priced or low
Yeah.
commission clients. And so I would take all the rentals because in Arizona, unless it's a luxury rental, you make $200 plus you have to pay your brokerage, plus you have all the gas that you use in your time. And so by the time you get it, it's like 115 bucks, which when you're making $250 an hour, that doesn't make sense. So you give
Yeah.
one of those kinds of leads to other newer agents, and I would foster those leads to make sure that when they were done in a year or two renting, that they turned into buyers. So those were the two things I had control over. And then of course, social media and just word of mouth. And, if you know a lot of people, that always helps.
Yeah. And I feel like real estate is kind of like a competitive market. Do you have any advice for people who are looking to like stand out or anything in that regard?
I think most people want, like, my natural gut is to say how to stand out on social media because that's really how you stand out these days.
Hmm.
But people forget that an old school quality, good reputation goes a lot further. And so to have a good reputation where you live and in your community amongst your real estate colleagues, that is what goes further. If you've
Hmm.
ever seen a real estate agent's email signature, most of them say a referral is the biggest compliment. And that's because that's telling the agent that I did a good job and you think that I did good enough of a job to send me to your friends and family.
Hmm.
So, how do you stand out? I think there's two ways to stand out. You can either have a great network and you're well known. Maybe you do make it on social media platforms and that's how you become well known. Or you can create a top notch experience for people. And that includes being smart, being on time, being professional, being available when they need you. And those two things, I find most people have one or the other. They have like a public image that attracts people, or they have really just their shit together and they're really good
Yeah.
and they have no public image online, but they just crank. So
Yeah.
kind of, I try to be both.
Yeah. It's hard, but it worked.
Yeah, it's hard. It's worth it because you kind of want to get leads from both and you want to
Yeah.
foster both. So yeah.
Yeah. And being someone that's been in this industry for a while, what are some common like mistakes that people generally make when buying or selling property, and how can we avoid them?
We'll break it up. So you have first time home buyers who it's okay. First of all, every buyer has an emotional attachment, whether they think so or not. And most
Hmm.
men, like bachelor guys, they'll always be like, oh, this isn't an emotional purchase for me. And then all of a sudden they walk in and they're like, okay, I love this house. I have to have it. What do I do? Right. So I'm like, okay, so the emotions are in there. Let's just
Yeah.
start there. So, and I'll share an example of a luxury buyer and how he did not get a house from emotions. So, new buyers, well, really any buyers, if you are casually looking and then you stumble upon a home that you want and you have to have it right now and you want to put an offer in, you really need to make sure that you are pre qualified, or if you're paying cash, that you have your proof of funds ready. Because per the contract, you have to submit your proof of funds or your pre qualification letter from a lender with the contract, or it's null and void. So you can be super excited, see it. Of course, it's going to be Friday night or Saturday. And if your lender doesn't have a cell phone number that they've provided you, you're stuck till Monday. So getting pre-qualified beforehand, if unless you're paying cash, you're ready to go. You can go write that offer the second you find the house that you want. So if you're getting a loan, that would be my biggest piece of advice.
Hmm.
And as far as the luxury sector goes, what I've learned is that successful people obviously have a lot of money and they also
Yeah.
have big egos. And so in 2019, I had the buyer and we were under contract for 3.4 million, and the buyer and the seller were both owners of multi-million dollar companies, if not probably close to a billion.
Hmm.
And it kind of became a game of like whose dick is bigger, and they squabbled over $37,000 and the deal didn't get done. And to
Wow.
this day in 2025, if I show that buyer a house, he's like, I should have just done it. I should have just paid the 37,000, because at that point price point, to give somebody perspective, that's like $300 to us,
Yeah.
$400 to us. But somebody who's like worth that much money, $37,000 is nothing. And it
Yeah.
just became this game of ego. And so the price point you work with reflects, a first time home buyer is going to really rely on the agent. And then a seasoned buyer or seller is going to, they kind of just know they've done it a few times. So they
Yeah.
understand what they're in for. And sellers, I think a big mistake that sellers make is every seller thinks that their house is the best.
Hmm.
And it is for them. They built their lives there, their children were raised there. It has a lot of sentimental value.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there's no price for sentimental value. And so sellers also become kind of, I call it, they're used to their own shit. Like they walk
Hmm.
through the house, they're not phased by what buyers would be phased by there because they're used to it. So
Yeah.
making sure that your house has curb appeal, is presentable, that it's, if you're asking top dollar, that the price and the quality of the house match. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and for like a new home buyer, like their first ever one, what are some things to look for in a property before like jumping on it and be like, I want it? Like, what are some things that we should make sure of beforehand?
That's a great question. Probably understanding that it is emotional, because
Mm-hmm.
typically if you're a solo purchaser, it's different. You don't have anybody to check in with.
Yeah.
But when you have a husband or a wife, you both have to be on the same page. And usually they don't like the same house, to be honest. And then the
Yeah.
wife wins and the guy has to cave. That's usually how it goes. And so you also don't want to be house poor. And if you've never
Yeah.
heard that, it means that you're literally putting all your money into your mortgage payment and you don't really have anything left over to live. And what happens is that first time home buyers, or maybe a second time home buyer, they see a house and they like what it looks like. And they like what it looks like and don't quite understand that they can make a shitty house look like that house. They're going to
Yeah.
pay less. Yes, they have to put in the work. You have to get a general contractor, but you get to go pick out the materials and you can make it look like that, but you could probably make it look better. You have to want a project. You have to want to put time, effort. I mean, it can be your whole life. I've remodeled a house. It's a lot of work and it's a lot of decisions, but it comes out how you want. And
Yeah.
when you're a first time home buyer, you don't realize like you really are paying top dollar for somebody else's remodel and you don't really know the quality of the work.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big deal. If you do it yourself, you know the quality of the work,
Yeah.
the workmanship, I should say.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And looking back on your career in real estate so far, what is something that you wish you knew earlier on in your career that you kind of take with you now?
I don't know if you're able to learn what I know now because it's wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're new at anything, you're just doing the best you can.
Yeah.
So we'll use negotiating as an example. When you're a new agent, and if you don't have negotiating skills or background, you have these clients who are typically older than you if you start in your 20s.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not afraid to negotiate because they might be 40, 50 years old. They've probably had quite a few jobs. In
Yeah.
my case, a lot of them were men and not sleazy ones, but VIP clients. And they would say, okay, go in with this. And they'd tell me what to do and they'd coach. And inside, I'm just like shrinking. I'm like, oh my God, this is going to lose the deal. So you have like this mixed emotion when you're new. Like, I selfishly don't want to lose the deal because my bank account needs that money.
Yeah.
My street cred needs to sell this house, right? Like there's a lot of selfishness that goes into real
Yeah.
estate, but at the same time, you just landed this client. Maybe they were referred, maybe you picked them up at an open house. And you're like, okay, I also can't let you down. Like, I have to do a good job and I need to make sure that you are going to get what you came to me for. And I need to make sure this is a smooth transaction. But inside, you're just shaking in your boots because you have
Yeah.
no idea how to negotiate. So, fear comes with courage. In order to get to the other side of fear, once you have the courage to just go for it, and you have the result that you want, that eliminates and mitigates any fear in the future. You understand how negotiating works now. Like now, when a client comes to me and says, okay, I want to lowball it, I'm like, let's fucking go. Because
Yeah.
you don't know what the seller's situation is. And the agent's job is to protect their client. So they're not going to be like, oh, they need to sell, please submit anything. No, they're not going to say that.
Yeah.
But so these are the things that you really have to experience. As much as I wish that I had like tangible stuff. I mean, I guess go for it. Just go for it, you know? I'm a type of person that I don't really take no for an answer. And because of that, like I'll go to this door and if it's a no, then I go to 75 more doors to see
Yeah.
where the yes is. So I do think that real estate is very much a sink or swim, both in the attitude and in your actions to lay that foundation in order to have a successful business. So the advice that you have to take when you're new is that you have to get over the other side of fear and work at it every single day because what you put into it is truly what you get out of it.
Yeah. No, I love that. That was very well said. And if we move on, you're very vocal about like empowering women to live confidently and having confidence. And you were talking about like your podcast and everything. What advice would you have for anyone listening to this right now that's struggling with having confidence, especially in male dominated fields like real estate, like we were talking about? What advice do you have for someone that's lacking that confidence?
You kind of have to think like a man. When you take a look at the powerhouse women in real estate, they're pretty masculine. And I don't mean they don't wear makeup or a dress. They have a very masculine attitude,
Mm-hmm.
which makes people feel like, okay, she knows what she's doing. And most powerhouses naturally harbor that. Like I just am naturally very masculine.
Mm-hmm.
And so it makes it easier to talk like a man because the emotions are out. You're direct, your clients trust you. I think if you're analytical, that totally helps. But to understand what it takes, like why don't people want to work with a female in general, not just in real estate, but in general? It's because they're emotional. That's usually what people
Mm-hmm.
say. And there's a time and a place to be silly. There's a time and a place to have empathy. And those things will come up in the transaction, meaning you're going to have fun with your clients when you're showing, you're going to have, you know, hard moments when they lose a house, and you have to put on those different hats. But when you're in the
Yeah.
middle of trying to like win someone's trust, if you just like come across as like a Barbie doll, like nobody's going to trust you. They don't want to work with you. You know, you have to show up, be prepared. Like I have specific outfits for different things, and
Mm-hmm.
that helps eliminate analysis. Like, oh my God, what am I going to wear? Like, I just went and bought a
Yeah.
really nice outfit for listing appointments. Done. I never have to think about it again. And it looks good and I'm proud to show up in it. Preparation. The reason why I stress and I'm so vocal about being confident as a woman, let's get back to that, is because I
Mm-hmm.
was in a very toxic and damaging relationship for 2.5 years. And when I got done with that relationship, I had no self esteem, self confidence. I felt very insignificant, both in my life and in the world. And when you get to a low point and then you somehow think you can't get any lower, but you do, eventually your two options are I either end my life or I change my life.
Yeah.
And if you really sit and think about the trajectory of both, one's a very short trajectory, and the other one requires a lot of courage. And you have to start somewhere. And it's a it's a hard place to be. It's a long road ahead. And I just want people to want more for themselves. I want people
Yeah.
to know that where they are, you're not stuck there and you're in charge. And I don't really have a lot of empathy for people who are stuck in shitty situations. I think there's
Mm-hmm.
exceptions for sure, but for the most part, you're in charge. Like I've brought
Yeah.
plenty of opportunities to people and they're like, "Oh, yeah, that's not for me." And I'm like, "You haven't even heard about it. You haven't even asked yourself like, "Hey, if this is going to improve my life, should I do this?"
Yeah.
And that's where I get frustrated with people because once you start doing self development work and you are really evolving, it's very easy to spot the people who are just existing and they're not living. And
Yeah.
so, the bottom line is I just want people to want more for themselves, but you can only lead a horse to water. So we
Yeah.
put
And
the
if someone
information
doesn't
out there.
want it, you can't really change it. And I think that's like for anything. Like I kind of use that in a sense of like mental health. I feel like the
Hmm.
first step to helping yourself is to want to help yourself. And I
Hmm.
say that a lot too. And I think it kind of goes with that. Like if you don't want to try and you don't want to try and make your life better in any aspect, no one can really do that for you.
Completely agree. And both are hard. So we'll just use
Mm-hmm.
money. It's hard to be broke and it's hard to work towards being successful,
Yeah.
but it sucks to be broke. And at least if you're working toward changing your life, you're going to see results. It's
Yeah.
inevitable. And so, that's like a big phrase right now on Instagram, which is choose your hard. And it's so
Mm-hmm.
true, but people don't want, and I blame Amazon for this. People just want that gratification right now. They want it right
Yeah.
now. And I swear it starts with Amazon, because you can get something, if I order it now at 10:30 in the morning, I can get it by 4 p.m. And people think that's how everything operates in the world. And so
Yeah.
the hardest part about real estate is to get people to understand that what you see on social media, which everybody only showcases beautiful homes. That
Mm-hmm.
it, first of all, showing houses is 1/100th of the job. Number two, showing beautiful houses that are 2 million and up is 1/100th of the 1/100th of the job. And you have to know the right people. You have to be in the right rooms. You have to have the clients in order to understand that you're going to get in that house.
Yeah.
And social media has taken like this tiny sliver of real estate and just blown it out of the water. And so when people get into real estate, they're like, "Oh, I didn't realize it was this hard. I just thought I was looking at houses." And I'm like, "Oh,
Yeah.
dude, you are the janitor, you are the marketing person, you are the salesperson, you are the CEO, you are the therapist to your clients, you're the negotiator, the admin, you wear the housekeeper, the pool, the landscaper, like you're literally everything, because you just go around cleaning up people's shit all day.
Yeah.
That's literally what you do. And you're a babysitter on top of it, right?"
Yeah.
And I don't say that with any disrespect to the job, but to the people who don't want to work hard and they just want to get in and have 1 million followers and make $1 million and have a show, it's like, okay, dude, that is so not the job. If you are connected and you got the hookup, go for it. Like, all the praise to you, but that's not
Mhm.
the everyday Joe of real estate who's going to have that experience.
Yeah. And I feel like with the rise of like the shows like Selling Sunset and things like that, like I feel like they obviously don't show every single thing that goes on behind it. Like they show sneak peeks and stuff, but I feel like if someone that doesn't know anything about real estate will watch that and they'll be like, I want that, that's what they'll expect. Like you said, like to walk in, get such a big following, show pretty houses and call it a day. But
Totally.
there's also so many people that work at that company. I don't remember what it's called, but I think it's like Oppenheim Group or something that
Mhm.
like are not on the show and they have a social media account and like they'll show more of like the behind the scenes of like what actually goes on and stuff. So I feel like you said, with social media nowadays, people only show like the nice like highlights and stuff, but there's so much that goes on behind the scenes. Even with like business owners, like people like show like their success and then people are like, oh, like I can get that. Like I made like 500,000 in my first year, things like that. And I feel like that's so unrealistic. But if someone says it online, people assume that it's easy to get there and then they'll try and then they don't get that and then they get upset. But that's like not the reality for everyone.
Yeah, you're totally right. You have to have the dedication, the work ethic. You have to be a self starter if you're going to be any
Hmm.
sort of entrepreneur. It's different if you're getting paid to be somewhere from 9 to 5 and you go home. They don't, like, yes, you have thresholds to hit and deadlines, but like they don't care. Like the job got
Yeah.
done. And then if you get it done in the first 3 hours, you're done for the rest of the week. Nobody's giving you more work. And so that's the difference, is like there's always something that you can be doing when you own your own business. And you have to, like, at least I've had to put everything into tiers so I
Mhm.
understand like what's A work, what's B work, what's C work,
Yeah.
what's D work, because you have to understand like where the priorities are.
Yeah.
You
For
hit the
sure.
nail on the head.
Thanks. The last part of my podcast, I asked people on Instagram to ask you questions, and I picked two of my favorite ones. So the first one is there's been a lot of talk about short-term rentals like Airbnbs. Do you think it's a good investment strategy for beginners, or are there risks people should be aware of before diving in?
So there's two types of landlords in the residential world. You have, well, I guess I should say, we'll stick to two types. You have
Mm-hmm.
a long-term hold and you have the short term. And short-term rentals require, if you're not going to be the one managing the property, which means when there's problems, you're not the person that they call at midnight because there's problems with the house, then you have to have a whole team. And there's property management companies for this that manage it for you. But if you decide to do it by yourself, again, you are the housekeeper, you are the house turner, you are the person on Airbnb, you're the person responding to requests, to comments,
Mm-hmm.
to anything. Like it's a different type of work, and people who are seasoned, I've talked to them and they're like, "Oh, it's no problem because I don't own any Airbnbs. It's not my thing. I'm not
Yeah.
interested." Because I feel like it's a lot of wear and tear on the house as
Yeah.
well. And as the owner, when people get into it, they're like, oh my gosh, like this was ruined, this was stolen, and you're just like, is this really how the public treats a house? Like it's kind of
Yeah.
shocking because most people come to party, let's be real.
Hmm.
And so the aftermath is you need a cleanup crew in there. That's number one. And you have to have the funds up front to furnish it and to purchase everything from a pizza slicer to a bath towel. Like people kind of forget what it takes to get an Airbnb up and running because it's so
Yeah.
glamorous on the outside. And a long-term rental is somebody where you more or less, I don't want to say you just sit back and collect the money, but it's much more of that feeling.
Yeah.
So the tenant is typically in there for 12 months, possibly longer, and you just get your money. And if they have an issue, then they call you or your property manager. So it's a lot more forgiving of
Yeah.
time, and it's less hands-on to have a long term. So it really just depends on the style that you're looking for. You have more of a chance to make more money if you're going to run an Airbnb.
Yeah. Awesome. And then the last question is, what do you think is the first step towards building genuine self-confidence?
It's going to be working on yourself.
Hmm.
Facing the demons, understanding who you are, why you are, what triggers you, how do you shape it. I mean, working on your confidence, I think, is going to be something that is ever evolving.
Yeah.
I'm still always like, I'll see somebody, I call it trying it on. Like, I'll see somebody show up a certain way, or I'll see somebody walk in a room a certain way. And I'm like, oh, I like that. How can I implement? So I'll practice at home by myself.
Hmm.
And then I implement it the next time I go into that situation. And if it felt good, I'm like, okay. And if it didn't feel good, I either totally ditch it or I tweak it to see, like, okay, how can I put my twist on it so that I like it?
Yeah.
Sometimes you don't know what the answer is. And that's why so many things in the confidence journey is a trial and error, because there's no one way to do it. You can cut it in so
Hmm.
many ways. And that's why I like talking to friends, listening to podcasts, reading books. I mean, I've even stolen things from movies. Like Legally Blonde is one of my favorite
Yes.
movies. And sometimes the way that Elle Woods handles things is the exact opposite of how I would, because I'm very blunt and direct. And the way she
Hmm.
handles it is like she gets the job done, but she does it in such a nice, kind, feminine manner.
Yeah.
My friends who know me are like, okay, Elle Woods. Like they know exactly when I like turn her on. I've been doing
Yeah.
it since freaking high school. So it's probably been 20 years of me like implementing Elle Woods into my life, but it's
Yeah.
helped me in situations where I don't know what to do. It's helped me rectify what I need to rectify without like flying off the handle.
Yeah.
So there's no wrong way to be more confident. It's just doing the work and putting in the time. And girl, it is going to be hard, long, and uncomfortable. But when you can look back and see how far you've come, it is so worth it. It is so
Hmm.
worth it. So I just encourage everybody.
Yeah. And like you said, it's like I feel like it's a lifelong journey, and like some days you're gonna wake up like less confident than the day before, and like I feel like that's normal and people shouldn't expect to like just be confident every single day. And even though like sometimes some people portray like being like very confident every single day of their life, like everyone still struggles with things, and I think that's like important to put into perspective as well.
Oh yeah. You think that those, whoever it is, we'll just say all the celebrities, like you think they don't wake up
Hmm.
and have bad days? Of course, but we're also used to only seeing the positive in people's
Yeah.
life, that it's like you forget that it's okay to have bad days or unexciting days,
Yeah.
and that's what's not highlighted is really just like a normal day-to-day life. I know I've been thinking lately, I'm like, I need to start documenting my day. And I'm like, gosh, that's so vulnerable and scary. And like, I don't even think it gets worth it. But at the same time, it would be interesting. Obviously, editing is what makes any video the best.
Yeah.
So if you can have it edited well, I'm like, maybe it would be worth it just so people can see what's going on.
Yeah.
But that
I
takes a
love
lot of
watching those
courage.
things. Yeah.
Do you?
Yeah, I love watching like day in the lives and like behind the scenes of things. And I feel like it's fun because it makes someone feel more relatable, if that makes sense. Like if someone just posts like nice pictures all the time and like looks like they're having like a great life, like I still like watching that and like seeing that. But I feel like when I can like relate to someone and see their personality more, that's what like ties me to them.
The unpolished version is what you like.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
see, sometimes when I watch those day in a lives, I feel like they're still staged. Like
Some of
it
them
doesn't,
I feel like they are, yeah.
right? Like it doesn't totally capture the raw conversations or the meltdowns. And those are the
Yeah.
things that make you relatable. Like, oh, you're so successful and you're having a day like this. Okay.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah,
I
like I've
always
seen people cry in their ones, and like that's what like I mean I don't want people to cry, but like when they cry, I'm like,
correct.
oh, like relatable, like that's I can see myself in that more than like if it's always happy stuff, if that makes sense.
Totally. And like, for example, my boyfriend, I feel like he's seen so many sides of me. And when we first started living together, he came home one day and I was sitting there having a full blown meltdown. I had just
Hmm.
expanded my business to Miami and I was just sitting there crying my eyes out. And he walks in and he's like, "What's wrong?" And I was like, "Am I a loser? Am I a loser? Like, I don't know what I'm doing right now." And I just like, and part of me was like, I wish he would get on and tell the story to somebody because
Hmm.
it is absolutely, now it's hilarious. But
Yeah.
at the time it was like, hang on a second. And he went and he got 2 beers, he got a chair, he sat down, he's like, "Let's talk about it." And I just went through every little thing that was making me feel like I couldn't get through it. I couldn't breathe because I had so much going on. Like running 2 businesses in cities across the
It's
United
hard. Yeah.
States is not easy. I'm still struggling with it. It's been
Hmm.
2 years, a little more. And I'm like, I don't even know what I'm doing still, but I'm figuring it out. Like I keep
Yeah,
trying and I'm like determined to not let it break me. But those are the things that make you grow. And now I said,
exactly.
I look back and I'm like, that is hilarious. Like he walked in and that's what I'm asking. Like he just moved
Yeah.
in. And I'm like, am I a loser? I'm like, this is not a good look, but I didn't even
Yeah.
care. It's just at my breaking point.
Yeah. Yeah, but see, like sharing stories like that like makes you even more relatable, and I feel like people are like they'll see like you more as a human than like this fabric like you know what I mean? Like for celebrities, sometimes I feel like I look at them, I'm like they're this like fabricated person. But when they show
Mhm.
like their personality more and like more relatable things, I'm like they're literally just human.
They are. And I think that's the hardest thing to remember because we
Yeah.
glamorize everything. We make up
Mm-hmm.
the point from A to B. So you can see A and B and you make up how it gets there.
Yeah.
Not necessarily the truth. So,
Yeah. Exactly. Well, that's all I had for you today. So thank you so much again for coming on and sharing all this with us. Before you leave, do you want to shout out any of your socials, where people can find you, where they can potentially see these day in the lives in the future?
ooh, you're just encouraging me to make them.
Yes.
So all of my handles are at Lauren M House, and you can DM with like I always like a little keyword so that I know where you're coming from. So why
Yeah.
don't we DM Amanda Wan
Yes.
or Behind the Girl Boss, and we can figure out from there. Like I'm always happy to talk to people and like help them along the way and try and provide
Hmm.
resources. I feel like I've done everything. So yeah, at Lauren M House.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again for coming on.
Thank you, Amanda.